Ravens, Texans. Should have been an epic matchup. Turn back the clock a month and a half ago. Week 5. Texans at Ravens. People would be going crazy for this one. Now,
Trevor. Here's speaking of the clock. You know what time it is in Baltimore, right?
Is this a Cooper Rush joke or what is it?
Yes, it's rush hour. I just got an even louder boo from Eli than I did last week. Just so we know, I lost him.
No, that one's good. That one's good.
That was better than the ransom one. Okay, good.
That one's better than the ransom one. That one was better.
There you go.
You're getting better. The puns are getting better, which probably means they're getting worse, which means the boos from Eli are going to get louder until the soundproof glass actually shatters at some point.
He's going to walk out. He's going to walk out here with the umbrella and just hook me right. You have to do one of these weeks. You have to do the rest of the preview yourself, I'm sure.
Nah, you can't leave me like that. All right, so the injury list for the Baltimore Ravens is robust. I mean, we've got Nnamdi Madubuike is already on IR. Ronnie Stanley is injured. Lamar is obviously injured. Roquan Smith, Kyle Van Noy, Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, all injured. This is tough. This is a time in the year where they need to be healthy and get wins. This needs to be bounce back time. We talked about last week. One of them or the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be 1-3. It's Baltimore. They're 1-3. This should be a game that they should win against a Texans team that's really struggling. But I'm curious, what do you think about this matchup? Where are we starting with this one? And we'll get into who you think wins.
We are actually going to start with what the Texans need to do to find a way to get out of Baltimore with a win. And if they do, then you start to look at the Texans. You go, okay, they're 2-3. You feel a little better, two wins in a row. Maybe a functional offense finally here at some point. But you have to like the way, and it was still a struggle of a game against Tennessee last week. That game was 6-0 after 3 quarters, and then they took over in the 4th. But you have to like the way the Texans ran the ball last week and committed to it. I'm going to list you off a set of numbers here from Houston last week. 69.6 rushing grade, 35 carries, 129 yards, 86 after contact, 9 first downs, 1 touchdown. Every single one of those numbers on the screen there was a season high for the Houston Texans. Woody Marks obviously making a huge impact, just giving you some sort of feat, some sort of speed in this run game. Look, Nick Chubb's a great player. He's been a great player for a long time, but he's slowing down, and the Texans need some speed in this backfield. Woody Marks gave it to him last week, and you're talking about playing against a Ravens team this week that is dead last in the NFL in run defense grade. And now, like you mentioned, no Van Noy, no Madubuike, no Roquan Smith this week. This Ravens run defense is extremely vulnerable. I think actually the most important number there for Houston was the 35 carries. Just get the football going on the ground. Nick Caley, get down ahead. Look, I think this game is going to be ugly and defensive, and the Texans still struggle to pass protect, and the passing game needs some work. But if they can balance it out a little and just give you even the threat of a decent run game with Woody Marks, then I think that it changes the dynamic of this offense a little bit, because they still want to put tight ends on the field and run the football. If they can do that, they can control the pace of the game like they did against Tennessee last week. They can continue to knock on the door, and like what happened last week, eventually the door will open and you can blow the doors off of the game and eventually win it 26-0 like you did against Tennessee. Now, I don't think this game will be 26-0, but it's the idea that, okay, we can get down in the run game and be physical and commit to it, and it can be functional.
This might be the quickest game of the week because both of these teams are just going to want to run the football, right? You talked about how much success the Texans had last week with Woody Marks and leaning into him in the run game. And honestly, how much of that has been missing from the Texans offense throughout the first portion of the season. So having success doing that last week, they're going to continue to try to lean into it a little bit more against the worst run defense team in the NFL through the first 4 weeks. And on the other side of things, the Ravens, a big part of their offensive identity has been running the football, and yet over the last 3 weeks, they have just a 61.5 rushing grade. Now, fumbles go into that, certainly, but also their struggles as a team. Now you don't even have a Lamar. Now it's rush hour. You've got to, they are going to give the ball to Derrick Henry as much as they possibly can in this game, and they're just going to try to smash their way to a victory at this point. So I feel like this might be the quickest game that we have the entire week because both of these teams just want to run the football. I don't know how many passing attempts we're going to get in this game. I don't know how many high degree of difficulty passes we're going to get in this game. But I feel as though there's probably not going to be a lot of incompletions. And I feel like it's going to, at some point, I feel like we got a running clock here in this game. I think it's going to be low scoring, certainly. I still think the Texans offensive line, even though they were a little bit better last week, like they're just not a great unit overall. When you look at the Texans tackling versus Derrick Henry, they're top half of the NFL when it comes to missed tackle percentage versus the run, and so like they're not terrible in that regard. So I think that they'll be up to the challenge. Certainly that defensive line, how the defensive ends are going to play with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Can those guys be game wreckers? Can Henry To'o? Can Azeez Al-Shaair? Like, can those guys be difference makers as tacklers at the second level? All of that to me is really important. But ultimately, the Ravens are reeling, man. So many of their best players are not even going to be out there this weekend, or at least if they are, they're not going to be anywhere near 100%. I'm going to go Texans 20, Ravens 13, but I think this is a low-scoring affair. The over-under on this one is 40.5, and I even feel like it could be significantly lower than that, given how these teams have played through the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, this is tough to pick because I do see, there's still a scenario here where Derrick Henry could win the Ravens this game. Structurally, the Texans defense, it's a bad matchup for them to play this Ravens offense with the way they want to run the ball right downhill, all the four-man fronts the Texans are in, all the multiple tight end sets the Ravens use all the time. I think the Ravens could have success running the ball in this game as well, but if Derrick Henry doesn't tee off for at least 120, we think, find a way to balance out this offense and make Cooper Rush's life easy. I think that for both of these teams, first down is going to be incredibly important because, look, the Texans have not been good in third and long situations because they can't pick up blitzes at all and things in obvious passing situations. And if you're the Ravens, you just don't want Cooper Rush in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 against this pass defense because it's the best part of the Texans team still. I'm with you. Defensive game, going to be ugly, probably going to go by quick with not a high play count. 17-13 Houston.
Super Pony gave us another super chat not too long ago. $4.99 this time. Appreciate you once again giving us a super chat here. We got 2 points from him that we need to discuss here. First one says, I don't think that Dave Canales is the offensive mind that we thought he was. That was the first point. And then he says, A.J. Brown complaining about not getting the ball when his team is 4-0 isn't a good look. Breaking, hot off the press, wide receiver doesn't like the fact that he's not getting the football. Super Pony, I'm not going after you by saying that, but I feel like that's every single wide receiver, no matter what. And for as much as I know people will say, hey, A.J. Brown should just, shut up and just be cool with the fact that they're 4-0. We have talked about this with the Eagles. Like, yeah, they're 4-0. I'm not trying to take any sort of win or success away from them. But I just mentioned, they have the least amount of explosive plays in the NFL this season, of 10 yards or more. So it's not even the 15 yards or more that we talk about in the passing game. I just looked at 10 yards or more. They have the least amount of those plays in the NFL so far this season. Not connecting with A.J. Brown, big reason why, of course, because he's a big play guy, but where A.J. is probably complaining about it more so from his own standpoint. He's not entirely wrong in the fact that they do need to get him more involved. They do need to be more explosive. And if this team is going to be back-to-back Super Bowl champions, they have to be more explosive in what they do, whether that's through A.J. Brown or somebody else. Naturally, I think it will be, but that's why it's like, yeah, I think that A.J. is probably coming from a more of an A.J. Brown side of things, I should say, but he's not entirely wrong about not being happy with the lack of explosives there in Philadelphia.
No, you're right. Look, wins are not a wide receiver stat, right? Wide receivers get paid to catch the football and rack up yards, so I get it from A.J.'s perspective. And to be honest with you, when you look at the Eagles, look, the hardest thing to do is continue to find ways to improve while you're winning, while you're on this 20 out of 21 winning streak and just won a Super Bowl and you're 4-0 now and all that. I think anybody who's watched any Philadelphia Eagles games this year knows they've played, on the offense, B- football, if we're being honest. They have not played great offensive football. They've won all 4 of these games by 1 score. And to be honest with you, this is the same conversation we were having last year when the Chiefs were winning all these 1-score games. It's like, well, they're getting by. They're finding ways. They're blocking field goals. It's the same thing. So and the Eagles have more talent than that Chiefs offense did last year. When you have A.J. and Devontae, Saquon, the offensive line, even, obviously the Chiefs have Mahomes, and you would take him over Jalen, but they have a boatload of talent. and they should be playing better offense than they're playing right now. So, look, is it great for it to be as publicized as it is with A.J. Brown? Not necessarily, but I do get it. They need to play better on offense if they want to win a championship again.
Yep. And then on the point about Canales, yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. We might be having a deeper philosophical talk about Canales depending on how the rest of the Carolina Panthers season goes. But I talked about this when he was hired. Like it was a risky hiring when it was made, and I don't necessarily say that as anything personally against Dave Canales, but he's coming off of his first year as a play caller, as an offensive coordinator, and I've mentioned this a bunch of times. Like, yeah, it was successful in Tampa, but it's not like Liam Cohen the year after, his fingerprints on the offense were much more noticeable than that of what Canales was the year before. And so Canales was always a little bit of a, okay, going out on a limb type of a hire, because you hired a young offensive coordinator and you hoped that he was sort of this like next hotshot, brilliant, genius guy to really help out a team that have been devoid of consistent explosiveness and creativity and just offensive ingenuity and everything. And I think that Carolina's struggles on the offensive side of the ball are multifaceted, right? I still think that Canales is figuring it out as a coach, because that's what his background would have told you his second year in probably to still be doing. Bryce was absolutely horrendous to start last year. Didn't even come in until the second half of the season. Looked better. The offensive line looked better last year than it did this year. The passing weapons really aren't much outside of Tetro and McMillan. A lot of the other guys are unreliable without Jalen Coker, and they can't get the run game going. I just think this team doesn't have a ton of talent. Like, if you go back to when Canales was with the Buccaneers, that Buccaneers team was much more talented on the offensive side of the ball than it was in Carolina. So it's hard to expect those same results, especially with a lot of the variables that have changed up and down over the last year and a half. And so, look, it's a results-driven business. I don't know how much longer Dave Canales is going to get with the Panthers, because if it continues to not succeed, I don't think that he gets a chance to continue to coach this team next year, or the lack of success, I should say. But I also don't necessarily know how much like it's like all him to blame. It feels like it's just kind of a tough situation for him, and as coaches often are, it might just be a scapegoat for bad team building and bad luck and maybe, yeah, some misfirings in coaching. But I don't think it's all his fault, is what I'm trying to say. Not that I think that he's the total answer, and not that I'm going to sit here and tell you, yes, he was the right hire at the time, but I also don't think that what Carolina is going through is all of his fault. I think that there's a lot of things that go into play there.
Yeah, and I mean, look, as a head coach instead of an offensive coordinator, you're also responsible for your defense. And for the better part of a year and a half, they've had the worst defense in football, right? And the decision, look, he kept Ejiro Evero because the second half of 2023, the Panthers' defense played well, but that also just hasn't quite worked. I mentioned 18 out of 21 of their last 21 games, they've had a defensive grade as a team under 65. Right. I mean, you just can't. They don't make enough stops. You know, I think when you look at the offense, they don't often get a chance to play in neutral football games because they don't get enough stops. They give up too many points as well. So I think that's the difference, too, between just being the offensive coordinator somewhere and being the head coaches. You're responsible for the whole team. And I think sometimes you see young OCs. I think about Sean McVay when he was first hired by the Rams. He hired Wade Phillips as such an experienced defensive coordinator and just said, hey, take the keys to the defense. I know you know what you're doing. It's fine. I'm not going to step on your toes. I think Ben Johnson in Chicago did a great job going and getting Dennis Allen, who maybe, obviously, we can criticize Dennis Allen as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he's always been very good. So I think there's times when you have dynamics like that where, yes, you're responsible for the whole team, and you got to put people around you that are going to be responsible for that success as well.
All right.